Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly podcast. I'm Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Good. I remember the name of the show. It's good. That's an important part of the process. We definitely did not have to do the opening 6 seconds of this podcast twice because one of us forgot. And again, we're not here to assign blame or talk about who forgot the name of the podcast they've done like 200 something episodes of. That's not what this is all about.
Nope, it sure is not, Chief. It's about Ohio State opening camp today, and we just got done talking to Ryan Day about 5 minutes ago, so we thought we would get together and just talk about what he talked about, because that's what we do on podcast time. We talk about what other people talk about. And as you were saying right before we started, there wasn't a whole bunch of like news that came from this because day one, you're not really going to get a whole bunch of news. Also, when you want to know about injuries, you're not going to get that from Ryan Day. And a lot of today was just catching up on all of his thoughts about everything, COVID response. How do you feel about safety? How do you feel about this and that and that? And so it always takes a while for these things to where you can actually start asking football questions. And there will be more football questions as these teleconferences go. But today, Tom, anything, what was like the number one takeaway for you, do you think?
Um, it was kind of interesting to me the way he talked about the fact that he was completely comfortable with camp opening and he felt very good about everything, no real concerns. He thinks the protocols they have in place are good. And it was like, do you feel good about the start of the season? It was kind of like, well, no. The exact quote was, I'm comfortable with us starting training camp. But then when he was asked, are you comfortable with playing a game? And he said, not yet. And that very much to me, sort of a lot of the conversation around that sort of echoed what I kind of took away from the players earlier in the week, where they feel very good about how Ohio State is handling it. They feel very good about the fact that Ohio State players are going to be responsible and not do dumb stuff like go to a house party or go out to bars or all of the other stuff that has caused major issues in a few other places. And they feel like if they stay in that bubble and they are all acting responsible and they can all kind of hold each other accountable, that they'll be okay to do things for the next month when it's just them and it's all entirely on them. The problem comes after that when it's like, okay, and now we have to hope everyone else is taking this as seriously as we are. And, I'm sure college football players on the whole are treating this much more seriously than just the average college student. But if college football players are not treating it as seriously as Ohio State football players are right now, then, you only need a couple of those to spend a little too much time with regular college students, and then you have a big problem, and that can become another team's problem as soon as you play them.
Yeah, that was the big thing for me as well, because it was exactly what the players had said 2 days ago that, yeah, if they were just doing inter-squad stuff, they'd probably all be fine and could start right away. But with their just the whole Colorado State thing, I think is you don't expect that to be in the Big Ten, so like you assume the Big Ten, the minimum level will be greater than any, the greatest levels that Colorado State would take, but you just don't know what everybody else is doing, and like what you're doing, you see it every day. You see how much work is being put into it, and then I think maybe with Ohio State a lot, they're like, well, most teams aren't working as hard as us, like the team, and maybe they figure like other programs aren't doing as much as Ohio State to do this part as well, and this part being like limiting uh, the ability to pass on COVID-19 or to catch it. So I can understand everybody's concerned, but as Ryan Day also said, like there will be more protocols put out once they get closer to games for how a game week will be, how Saturdays will be, how Thursdays and Fridays will be. So there is still more to come. I did think it was interesting that Ryan Day found out Ohio State was opening on Thursday, the same time everybody else did, and they did lose a day of training camp. We'll see if that comes back to bite them at Illinois. Maybe it will,
Well,
Tom.
well, here's the one reason that you think you might be confident that one fewer day of preparation will not directly kill Ohio State's chances of beating Illinois. It's that Illinois also found out on Tuesday morning, when everyone else did, that or Wednesday morning, I guess, that they were playing on that Thursday. So Illinois also missed one day of season prep. So you gotta figure this probably neither materially improves or hurts Ohio State's chances of beating Illinois, which are holding steady right around 100% right now, I think.
I would argue less coaching by Lovie Smith is better for Illinois.
That's true. That's an interesting way to approach this. Yeah, it was very much a I think that was very indicative of exactly how last minute all of this stuff was. I mean, normally this stuff leaks, and I think that we had heard some of this stuff. I mean, you had mentioned the October 24th date for the Michigan game a few days before that was the official date. But normally you'll have, you would think that they would have known everything. Ryan Day would have known everything a day or two before we did. I think some of this was very, very last minute and probably changed maybe in response to some of the stuff with Rutgers that was going on and Michigan State that was going on. And yeah, I mean, I just was thinking just before we started recording, it is remarkable. Go back to Monday, and if I told you, okay, 3 days from now, Ohio State will have open fall camp, have their schedule. They will be, 4 weeks from their season opener, and that I think everyone would have done cartwheels if they had been told that on Monday. So yeah, this has definitely been 3 good days towards, of progress towards a season. And, now they just have to keep doing what they're doing. I mean, Ryan Day talked about all the stuff they're doing in practice right now. He said testing protocols, the number one things in terms of making sure you have a clean practice and guys are, staying healthy. He said they're limiting contact, disinfecting as much as possible with practices. The other thing that was kind of interesting is he said they split the squad up today. They did not have a full squad practice today. They kind of split the team in two. That was something that he was asked about, just in terms of, you have to have the whole team together at some point, but also you kind of want to, you want to space guys out. So if, half of the group, someone in half of the group, potentially is infected, there's a whole nother half of the team that has no chance of getting it because they're not at the same practice at the same time or in the same location. So yeah, they are taking some interesting and unusual steps to protect themselves. But yeah, I mean, there is no question that they are taking this extremely seriously, because boy, oh boy, do they want a season.
He also mentioned they have tents outside of the Woody where they're holding some meetings as well to get some fresh air meetings. There's only so many questions you can ask, because it's like you get one question and a follow-up, but I wanted to know, because he was kind of asked this, like, how many of your guys are in a meeting at a time? Like, is it the entire position? And he didn't really get too into that, because we've talked about this before. Like, are you putting all of your quarterbacks in the same room at the same time? And is that a safe thing to do? But I guess if they're going to be practicing eventually together, then maybe it doesn't become such a concern. But I still, there will be schools where they are separating quarterbacks and starters from back, all of these different groups, and keeping them in their own little bubbles as much as they can. But it would be interesting to, I guess, go over to the Woody and see the tents laid out there. It's like, I don't know, like Vacation Bible School, something going on where everybody's just out running in the yard doing stuff, and crafts at this point, and then some lunch, maybe a little bit of a nap, and just a nice leisurely summer going on at the Woody this month. I'm guessing that's what it's like.
Speaking of Vacation Bible School, something straight out of the Old Testament. He was asked about was he if he had any comment on the reports that you may have heard about a little dust up with he and Jim Harbaugh on the Big Ten teleconference, and threatening to basically go Old Testament God on Michigan in response to that. His exact quote was, "I appreciate the question, but I'd rather not answer that right now." And his face, since this was a Zoom call, we could actually see his face. That was what his mouth said. His face said, "I do not appreciate the question, but I'd rather not answer that right now." So that was, because I'm sure that was one of the things that everyone's like, So he's not going to answer this, but someone has to ask it because you have to ask it. So yeah, not surprising, but yes, no answer on that question.
No denial either.
Mm,
I
that's yeah. I mean, yes, that is true.
I'm just
And
stating facts. I'm not saying you
no,
said
it
it.
is. It is. Yeah, no, it is, and it would be
I
very.
was
It's
asking. I didn't end my sentence with a question mark. I meant to.
yes, yes,
Uh, he didn't deny it either.
yes. No, he did not. He did not deny
Oh,
it either. Yes, yeah. We will
okay.
work on the inflection, but
Thank you.
yeah, no, no. That would have been very easy to say. I don't know what you're talking about. That was not what he said.
Um, he did say that it doesn't really matter about not playing at the end of the year, Michigan at the end of the year, because this what did he say? Like nothing's normal this year, and this won't be either, and that's okay. We'll adjust and whatever it takes to get it done. And that's been the attitude through all of this, and that's why you find out you're playing a couple of days earlier. It doesn't matter. It seems to me like when he was talking about focus, how the players are so focused. I think right now it's almost like there is literally nothing outside of the football facility that is I don't want to say like worth your time, but nothing good can come from like having your mind wander outside of the building this year more than like any other. I'm sure it's a lot easier other years where you're thinking, hey, I'm going to go out. I want to go do this afterwards. I want to go do this. Like there is really not much of that, or there shouldn't be. And so maybe when the world is all going to heck like it is right now, maybe it's easier to maintain that focus because like the straight ahead and the day to day, there's no point, and we know this. There's no point in looking 3 or 4 days ahead because each day. I think Ryan Day said each day presents its own challenge, and I think that's the case with the players as well. And they didn't want to talk about if there's no season. He doesn't want to talk about it. He has addressed that with the team, and just that the message is to take each day as it comes, focus on getting better each day. And I think there's no point in looking ahead to is there no season, or there's no point in looking ahead to Michigan being the 24th because it may end up being pushed into November, or who knows what. And so maybe it's easier to stay focused when you only have to look so far ahead.
Well, his answer on the Michigan game potentially getting moved around, it was interesting because he said, you know, we don't know exactly when and where we'll end up playing some teams. Which I mean, I don't know how literally to take that because that was one of those things where he answered it and then the person didn't follow up on what do you
Mm,
mean where? Like, could the Michigan game get moved to Ann Arbor in some circumstance, or could the Rutgers game get moved to New Jersey or whatever?
mm.
There was no follow up, and that may have I may be taking that too literally, but I thought that was interesting. But the overall thought of that whole the whole process there is right. Like you can't get all exercised about, oh well, this team is. I mean, I realized we literally did a show yesterday about which teams might be set up well with their schedules, but I think there was sort of an underlying and we probably we said this at some point, but certainly there's an underlying unspoken thing there also that hey, all subject to change. As with everything this year, things are subject to change.
Yes.
I did like your idea that nothing outside of the facility is good. It reminded me of the old Jim Tressel, nothing good happens after 10 p.m. It is 10 p.m. everywhere outside of the Woody Hayes Athletic Center right now. So
The floor is lava. Outside is 10 p.m.
yes, yeah. So and you know there was he talked about sort of some of the senior leadership on the team and the older guys on the team who can kind of provide perspective and leadership and make sure the younger guys are staying in line basically, and just explain to them like, look, this is not a normal year. You cannot do the normal freshman year crap that everyone wants to do their freshman year of college. Like that's not an option, because if you do that, you going out once could blow up the entire season. So don't do that. And what he said is, as coaches they can say that, but it's a heck of a lot more impactful if it's coming from players. Because if you've got Justin Fields telling you that and you're a young quarterback, or you have Jonathan Cooper telling you that and you're a young defensive lineman, or Justin Hilliard telling you that, or Sean Wade telling you that, like that's going to resonate a lot more, because those are guys, if you come in as a true freshman, those are guys you're probably looking up to. You were a high school player and you were watching Justin Fields carve up Big Ten defenses last year. You were watching Sean Wade, be a potential All-American last year. Those are guys you probably are coming in looking up to because you want to do what those guys are doing. So those guys are kind of the role models in the program. That makes it easier for them to sort of set the example and set the tone and keep the younger guys, from doing the one stupid thing that blows up the whole season.
And he did say like the perfect mix of a team is having those fifth and I'd say sixth year guys in Justin Hilliard, that you have these veterans who have been around and seen it all. And then you have these talented young players who can just fill out the rest of the roster. And you've got the talent and you've got the experience that combine is what a championship team is. And Tom, just listening to him talk about this team, even after day one, like it's clear he likes this team. It's clear that they have the proper motivation, the proper hunger, the proper anger and focus, because as he said, this was a team that was on its own for months and they came back in shape. And yeah, it's one thing for coaches to get players in shape. It's another when they do it on their own. That shows you their self-motivation. And a team that is self-motivated, that's probably like one of Urban Meyer's favorite things is when your team can just, it's like a self-propelling mower. You don't really have to push it, literally, because they're doing it on their own. And that's what this team is. And he said, what do you say? They could have had 11 or 12 captains, but he didn't want to go crazy. And so when you see guys like Pete Warner is not a captain or Chris Olave isn't a captain, they're all leaders. And he really, really likes the leadership of this team. Almost, Tom, I think almost as much as he likes the offensive line.
Oh, man. He does. You do get the sense he likes the offensive line because, you have the three starters back, all of whom are real, really established. You have left guard, where I think you and I have both penciled in, and I'm saying penciled, I mean sharpied in, Harry Miller at left guard. And then, he was asked specifically about right tackle, and it's like, okay, yeah, it's the first practice. We got to watch the first practice in the spring. I think we came away knowing a ton more, like walking away like, yep, especially in this circumstance where it's a split squad thing, like, yeah, that tells you they probably weren't running a ton of 11 on 11 today. That's what that tells me. But, he said Nick Petit-Frere has like remade his body. There were a couple of guys who he commented on, guys who really been working hard and really came back in like phenomenal shape. And Nick Petit-Frere was one of them. Justin Fields was the other. And, I think if you follow other sports, like it's like a running joke in baseball that, everyone shows up in the best shape of their lives for spring training. But last year there was one guy that we heard people talk about, like this guy showing up in phenomenal shape and it was J.K. Dobbins. And you see what kind of year J.K. Dobbins had. And that was like, he was the guy that you just, if we don't get to watch practice or we don't get to watch much practice, a lot of the time you're kind of reading tea leaves a little bit. And it's just like, if you hear the same thing from a bunch of different guys, that starts to mean something. So, I just put a little tick mark next to each of those names, like, okay, there's one. And then, when we talk to Kevin Wilson, if we hear some of the same stuff, it's like, okay, there's two. Okay. Greg Stidrar or Corey Dennis. Okay. Yeah. And then when you talk to players, you'll hear that too. Another guy who was like that for me, we heard the name Marcus Williamson again today. We heard Marcus Williamson from Sean Wade when it was just, you asked him, asked Sean Wade, about the slot corner. And he said, oh, it's a lot of guys, but he only said one guy's name and it's Marcus Williamson. Well, today, Ryan Day talked about guys who were showing really good leadership in the defensive back room, and he had two names. It was like Sean Wade, and then it was Seven Banks and Marcus Williamson. And you just kind of have like a little running tally in your head. How many times have I heard this name in a positive context this month, especially if it's a name you haven't heard a ton before? So, yeah, this is not nearly as ironclad in my mind as if we had been in there watching practice, but I don't get the sense we're going to get to watch a lot of practice this month. So this is kind of what we have to go on. But you can, once you've done this for a while, you can kind of tell, like, there's an answer they give when it's like, well, you asked me a question about this guy, so I'm going to say some words about this guy and they don't mean anything. There are other times that you hear a name and you're like, okay, I've heard the same name in the same basic, like, this probably means something kind of context. So Marcus Williamson goes on that list for me.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought him up because I would have. You mentioned watching practice. The closest we're going to get to watching practice this year is like watching Ryan Day's eyebrows go up, go down, just when he's talking about players. That's just his facial reaction to players is basically as close as we're going to get to watching practice this year. So, like, if you ask him about somebody, he's like, well, then like, oh, not a good practice for that guy. But if you ask him about somebody else, it's like, let me tell you. It's like, all right, that guy, keep an eye on that guy. And so Marcus Williams, and we've said, if he can stay healthy, we'll see what he can do. And it sure seems like even if he's not been healthy, he's been leading. And apparently he's been very healthy because he looked good to Sean Wade. So I was waiting for Ryan Day to also mention Cameron Brown in there, but whatever. Not everybody is like this a vocal leader. Some guys are just perfectly happy putting their head down and working, and we'll see how that goes on. Ryan Day was asked if face coverings will continue during practice, and he said once the helmets go on, they won't be required because it's almost too much at that point. And when they get wet, they're hard to breathe in, and that creates even a health hazard there. Said they've got a bunch of different face shields that they have access to that they will begin working out when the helmets go on, and he'll let the players see if whatever works for them. But they're just so confident in what they're doing health-wise and the medical staff, and he's confident in the offensive line. Everybody is, it's just day one, Tom, but this sounds like a championship team.
Well, they are number 2 in the coaches poll, which is almost a championship team. He was asked about that. Speaking of questions where you knew the answer before the questioner finished asking the question, he said it's nice to be honored, but all that matters is the record at the end of the year. Yep, correct answer. Next question. Trey Sermon, Master Teague. He was asked specifically about those guys and their health. Didn't really give an answer on their health, exactly where they are, but said they're both extremely talented. He talked quite a while about Teague and the job he's done to rehab from the injury he had this spring. And said Trey Sermon has been, quote, a great addition so far. He compared him to Jonah Jackson in terms of being a transfer who came in and sort of immediately fit in with the team and is doing things the right way, and that's pretty high praise. If you were in the Jonah Jackson camp as a transfer player, that's a pretty good indication. We had someone on our board ask who's going to be the first player to lose his black stripe this fall, and Trey Sermon is the cheating answer because it's a guy who comes in as a veteran transfer. Like, yep, he's going to know how to handle his business better than a freshman. So, yep, that's the answer.
I think Justin Fields lost his black stripe at the airport, like before he even got onto the bus back or to the limo back, whatever it was. Who knows? Ryan mentioned Steel Chambers had a great offseason. Mayan Williams has looked good, stepped in quickly, shown some things. Marcus Crowley is on his way back as well. Seems pretty okay he didn't have there's no voice of concern when he was talking about the running backs, even though they're all like in various degrees of not perfection. There's injuries, there's rehabbing, coming back, and he didn't seem concerned. So I guess that's a positive. But, if Mayan Williams is already going to be standing out, I think that also tells me that nobody else is playing. It's just like Steel Chambers and Mayan Williams right now, maybe.
Yeah, that's entirely possible. And again, they did a split squad thing, so maybe those guys got more reps than they would have normally. But yeah, if the true freshman who probably comes in 5th on the depth chart has done enough to stand out in the first practice, it's like, well, that's more carries than you would expect the 5th string potential running back to get. So that may answer some questions about some potential lingering health stuff for guys ahead of him on the depth chart without actually answering them. One other question that I saw just was scrolling through. He was asked about past experiences that may have helped prepare him for the uncertainty of this year. And hey, friends, if you zip back 2 years in the old Wayback Machine, he said the events of the summer of 2018 were similar in that you didn't know what was happening day to day. Which, yep, if you remember that, hey, remember when we thought standing in a loading dock for like 8 hours was going to be the dumbest thing we had to do? Like, no, this is. You just wait for 2020, friends. Wait till you see what we have coming down the pike. So, yeah, it's but he said the lessons from that were the same as the lessons for this, which was Like, you can sit there and worry about all sorts of different stuff, or you can just go in and just go, here's the stuff we can control. We're going to control that, and we can't worry about the other crap. And that is that is a pretty good mantra to go through life with. You control what you can control, and the stuff you can't is out of your control, and just there's no sense worrying about it because that's just wasted energy. So that's a pretty good. You kids out there, write that down. That's actually pretty good life advice from old Ryan Day.
Sometimes coach speak isn't just fluff. Sometimes it's actually, sure, it's coach speak, but it's also nutritious as well. Ryan was asked about Jalen Harris. He said he's part of the leadership council. He had a good offseason, but then he kind of stopped short and was like, well, and now he has to prove it in practice that he is ready to take on more of a role with the offense. And we'll see if that happens. Not having spring has kind of hurt the freshmen, but he talked about the freshman receivers, how talented they are, and he expects them to kind of just catch up, basically. And I would also expect that, Tom. They're pretty decent. If you don't know about the freshman receivers, go ahead and you can Google them. Mm-hmm. There's some pretty good ones on the horizon. Anything else from today before we call it?
The last thing, and this is one of our favorite August traditions, is not going to happen this year. Hotel check-in day, definitely the weirdest of all of the Ohio State media days of the year. Not going to happen this year because the players are not going to be in a hotel. He said they're just going to keep them in their apartments because they all have their own their own places, their own bedrooms. They're fine. They can if you're putting them in a hotel, you've got a roommate in your room with you. They all have their own bedrooms at their own places, so they're just going to keep them there and just keep doing things the way they've been doing them, because it's they've changed the way they're doing meetings. They're setting up, like you said, the more stuff that they can do outside. They're kind of adapting a lot of stuff, but that has worked so far, so they're not gonna mess with that. So that will be, boy, of all the things to lose this year, not getting to stand outside the Hilton Hotel and shoot photos of players walking in looking amused at us. That is going to be maybe one of the things I missed the most this year.
Fortunately, we got to do it for 8 hours 2 months ago in the blaring sun on blacktop. So I feel like we're okay. We got to do it a little bit. Maybe instead of like all of the players coming to us, we go to each of the players and just take pictures of them walking into their apartments.
How could we make hotel check-in day more weird and creepy? I've got it.
Everybody on the bus, let's get the map of Stars homes and let's go take some pictures. All right, we better wrap it up then, Tom. Anything else before we go?
Nope, I think we are good for today, and we will have probably more on this on Friday morning's Morning Scoop podcast. Tony and I will probably talking about a little bit more on this and providing a little more, probably some more context around some of these conversations. You can find that on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, SoundCloud. Just search Buckeye Scoop for to find the Morning Scoop and all the other great podcasts from Buckeye Scoop.
All right, sounds good. Check out Buckeye Scoop. Listen to the podcasts, read the content. If you're not a member yet, I would suggest subscribing, because camp has started and information is going to start flying like crazy. So thank you all for listening. Thank you for watching, and we will talk to you guys later.